I would like to call the December 7th meeting of the ASWWU Executive Board to order at 5:34 p.m. Okay, first we are going to move into the consent items. We just have one item today, which is the meeting minutes from November 30th. Yes, Dave? Oh, sorry, revisions to the agenda.
I just want to submit an additional document because the documents on item C, item D, the ceasefire resolution, that's right. Anyway, it doesn't reflect what I submitted. So there's an additional amendment. There's amendments A and B that are currently there, but amendment C, which previously was amendment B, but amendment C is not present in the meeting documents. I'd like to add that to.
Yeah, the reason I didn't add that's to add military funding into the document. There was, we decided at the last meeting that we would discuss that this meeting, so it was unclear if we wanted to include that or not, and we haven't had the opportunity as a board to discuss if we would like it included. And so I figured that could be a discussion that we have when we get to that time. That's also why I've added an additional 10 minutes from your original request, so that we can discuss that more in depth. And then you could just read out those revisions and additions that you would like then, and not that they're included, since it is unclear. We actually haven't had an opportunity to discuss that, or we haven't had an opportunity to discuss it yet as a board, and we decided that we would discuss it this meeting. And it was even in the drafter and editors of the document, it was undecided if we would like to include that or not, but I would love to continue to have a conversation about that when we get to that resolution.
Yeah, so the point of adding it is that so that the text, people can read the text as opposed to just hearing it. It wouldn't be in the resolution that acts as a sort of track change. It would just be the text of the line itself in like a formal motion, like the other amendments. And sort of the reason for that is because last time we were talking about changes, people wanted to like see the actual words written out versus having to like figure out where everything fits in.
Yeah, if we would like to add an additional document, Adam, well, number one, we wouldn't have the amendments to be made, since it wouldn't include amendment B. That one, I don't have a document that has that. And then if we would like to change that document and add another document, what is the process to do that? And are we even able to do that, since there's a meeting packet created?
Yeah.
Is another option if we would pass a version of the document around and it not be introduced as the official? Are we able to view a document in that way, or does it have to be part of the official?
So I'm hearing two concerns. I would suggest that adding documents to the meeting packet, which has been published, is probably not the right mechanism at the moment, because that's already been put together. I would probably connect that in some way to the Open Public Meetings Act material piece. The second piece of having a way to display documents that you can all share, if you'll email that, I think we can screen share it by way of the secretary's account for this, because I get that's it's a good idea and we should have that capacity. And at any point that you all want to view written documents for review rather than just verbally discussing them, you should have a mechanism to do that. Totally appropriate to have. So yeah, for tonight, we'll try this, we'll see if it works, and we will update administrative systems to make sure we have that capacity on them.
Yeah. One thing too is we all get the meeting materials 24 hours in advance, so we have had plenty of time to make any changes. And if you think that the documents are wrong, does not reflect the correct information, you can email me at any time and we can adjust them, because we've had 24 hours to make these changes, and it is expected that you're reviewing the documents before we come to this meeting. So there is plenty of time, and if you would have notified me about this before, it's just moving forward. Please notify the chair beforehand so we can make the adjustments appropriate. So, okay, we will move on to the consent items, which is going to be the meeting minutes for November 30th. Has everybody had a chance to review those today?
Yep.
Is there any discussion before we open to a motion?
I had a little correction I wanted to add to the minutes. If you go to page 9 of the document packet, the bullet point reading, Godwin, the LAC discussed about proper procedure for resolutions. It's clear to us that for Senate resolutions, they should pertain to academic matters. The executive board is the body that relates to external government agencies. That was a conversation between Kira, Gabe, and I, not the LAC.
Okay, I don't have the numbers on this document because I swapped it, but I'll write it down.
Awesome.
I would like to open the floor for a motion to approve the consent items today.
Actually, one more quick thing with the minutes from last week. It says under my report that I'm giving a presentation with Craig Dunn, president of the Sustainability Council. He's just a member of the President's Sustainability Council.
Okay.
So.
Okay, I would like to open the floor to motion to approve the consent items for today.
I motion to approve the consent items with amendments as stated.
One second.
It's a motion and second. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor of passing the consent items, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay. And then any abstentions? And Sebastian? Yeah. Sounds good. Okay, it passes, how many are there of those? There's 6-0-1, so 6 yays, 0 nays, and 1 abstain. Okay, it looks like there's nobody here for public forum, so next we're going to move into the chair report. Yeah, so I just wanted to briefly share a couple of things. As noted at last week's meeting, I'm going to be presenting before the Board of Trustees tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. As always, all of you are welcome and more than welcome to attend the meeting, and if there's something that you would like to share during my time, you're more than welcome to have a little bit of that time to introduce yourself, share any thoughts that you have, but just let me know beforehand so I know to yield some of my time to you. But everybody is invited, and I would love to see some of you guys since the last invitation, I don't think anybody actually showed up. And then today I spoke at the Foundations Board meeting that they had today. In previous years, they used to have a ASWWU report similar to that of the Board of Trustees. They haven't had that since before COVID. And so really just in our mission of repairing the relationship between the foundation and the associated students, they allowed me to come. I spoke a little bit about some food insecurity on campus, a little bit about the resolution that we passed, and then really just stressed how I am really excited to be working with the foundation and for the associated students to be working with the foundation, both in the events that Gabe will hopefully be taking on when working with the foundation to plan a couple of different events in different colleges, creating an environment of gratitude on campus, and then also just continued representation within the foundation. Since they have made really great strides, like 55% is not invested in fossil fuels of their portfolio, which is super big and amazing, but students just don't know that, and there's continued want to engage with the Foundation for Students, but not having that transparency there or really having the associated students engaging with them. It's really created a lot of confusion and a lot of, just for students. And so I'm really looking forward to the connection that we can have moving forward with them. And then the other thing that I wanted to talk about is I think many of us have heard about the Outback Farm that is happening and the concern of the funding for that. amazing program that we have here on campus. And so I had a meeting today that was with Sebastian, Liam, Adam, Miguel, who is a Fairhaven student senator, and myself, and we talked a little bit about going over everything that we know in regards to the Outback Farm, and really creating a plan of attack of how we're going to move forward, making sure that the Outback receives funding, since it's a really important thing to all of us, and it's an amazing program that we have here today. And then the other thing that I wanted to share is that we have Sebastian here today with our VP for activities. So super exciting to have you joining us today. So thank you for joining us at our last meeting with the quarter here. So
Glad to be here.
yeah. Is there anything you would like to share? Or?
Oh yeah, not too much for myself. I guess for like the chair report. It's my first sort of week still onboarding, so still figuring out the gist of things, but loving it so far. Was able to go to the first executive finance meeting was yesterday. It's good to sort of lead and chair a meeting. It's still sort of awkward and implement the rules, but it's good to be part of the team. So yeah, look forward to the next quarter, especially when I get the swing of things. But for now, just still in the excitement phase.
Yeah, Sebastian was able to join at the Activities Council yesterday, which is pretty exciting. So, and then the final update that I have is we're not going to be having a meeting, or we likely will not be having a meeting depending on what we have today. But it'll be announced at the end, but it will very likely, I hope that we don't have a meeting next week since it's finals week and I know some of us won't be here. Okay, next I'm going to move on to Morgan's report today.
So Social Justice Committee meets on Monday. For the first time, I finally got in a loop with them. So we will be meeting then. I don't have access to their agenda because they haven't shared the document with me, but I will figure that out. I am working with Eric Scott, who works for the CRT office, about the APEI trainings, looking into different companies and programs we could use for that. Because I am also working with the Dean of the Humanities College to look at APEI training for the employees and students for Compass to Campus. Since there was some talk about like needing to implement better training, since they work with kids from like marginalized communities, we just want to make sure that everyone feels comfortable and like well equipped to work with kids from different backgrounds. I'm also meeting with the CRT office to talk about like reporting and how everything kind of works within that. A lot of conversations this week with a lot of ethnic clubs about like the vigil that's taking place Friday, and just conversations of how to best support students on campus right now. Talking with the DAC about advocating for more accessibility in the dorms, which has been really interesting to look at. And then kind of behind the scenes, which is a personal thing, but also kind of comes into this position. I've also been on the side working with programming for Latina housing next year. It's planned to roll out, I think, a week before students would like come to campus, and it's like a whole program weekend thing. So I've been also working on that. So yeah, that's really all I have right now. So.
I just have a quick question. I would love to hear about anything that you've learned from students, specifically the different clubs, about how we can continue to support students on campus, and anything that you think is like applicable for the executive board.
Yeah, a lot of it has just been about getting into contact with students more. So I know there was like, we talked about the teach-in, was it, or the think-in? Yeah, the think-in that happened on Tuesday, and I got into contact after we talked, and some students were just like, yeah, it would have been great if we had more outreach about who was on the panel, more like student input kind of thing. So that way they felt more represented and more comfortable to like go to these spaces that reflect them. So.
Yeah, I reached out to Jasmine. Yeah.
Advisor question for your report regarding your work with CHSS and Compass to Campus. Do you have engagement from student senators? Would that be helpful?
Right now I just have the direct, well, the dean has actually been emailing me, we've been emailing back and forth, and they're implementing just a meeting with the program director of the Compass to Campus, so I feel pretty set in there.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that if needed, you're accessing those Senate resources too, so they can be advocates and always looking for those strategic places. Sorry, I'm totally blanking. The Outback Farm topic is a perfect one, like bubbled up from a lot of places. That's a horrible pun when we're talking about sewage issues.
No.
Multiple locations and bringing together resources from both governance bodies to make sure it's, you know, fully supported and addressed. So just curious. Thanks.
Yeah, we're always most powerful when we work together. Is there anything else to add or? Okay, and then now we will be moving on to an advisor report from Adam.
Thanks for a little bit of time, per usual. Administrative reminders, timesheets. Sorry about the disappointing email that had to go out regarding the deeper budget dive for the quarter, that we don't currently have budget for work over intercession. Please take to heart, thou shalt submit. Click submit on that pesky pay sheet. No, I'm not. Actually, I'm not. Wow, okay. Settle down. Our system is not intuitive. The multiple buttons you have to push. Please make sure that you submit it at your earliest convenience once your hours for this pay period are completed prior to midnight on the 15th. So that I can review them, get back to you with any questions, so that I'm not pestering you over your breaks. Please disconnect on your break as much as possible from the work you're doing. Okay, that's the big administrative update. On the budget, as I've explored more, I'm going to continue to bring you all budget updates. I will have something, and for reference for those that have not been part of this conversation, sorry, Sebastian, this is explicitly the AS board operational budget that was approved as part of the overall budget. So the budget that funds your all's time and the SGA's times for the board. I'll be bringing you more detailed reports and some professional development, i.e. budget review opportunities, so that you're more aware of and understanding your budget, so that you can give feedback. And reminder that AS budget proposals will again be due for the next fiscal year by the end of January. So as you're thinking about that, you're going to get a budget at some point, and that process is starting fast in January for AS programs, AS operations. So now is the time to be thinking about, we didn't get that in the budget last year, or here's an idea we wanted to make sure was represented in budgets next year. The next month after you come back from break is going to be the engagement period for creation. Right? So you'll hear that on a lot of your committees, you'll hear that in those places, so just be hyper aware and attentive to that. Let me know in the interim if you have any concerns. Right now, it's mathing out that we won't need any serious reduction in hours allowed for winter and spring based on current expenditure patterns for fall, just so you're all aware on that front as well. Thanks, and that's it for tonight. Yes, questions, comments?
Oh, well, I wanted to also let you guys know that in the current, because the Finance Council, as you remember from when we passed the membership, they were supposed to have a charter ready by the end of the year. It's going to be like a week late, that's fine. But the business director in that new charter is supposed to now give us like sort of more broad overview reports in some time period. So we'll also be getting some of that just from the business director.
Trent will be at our first meeting of the year next quarter, so he's already been invited and I'm waiting for him. Okay, it looks like we can move on to our action items with our guest. So we have Isaac today, who is the elections coordinator from the Office of Civic Engagement. Thank you so much for joining us today. Yeah, so we have document 2 which is the Elections Advisory Committee charge and charter.
Yeah. I guess I can take over now. There we go. So a lot of the edits are the same as last time, although there have been some few significant changes. For instance, we haven't changed the last passed on edit, or sort of minor cosmetic edits. Under the section about the AS Office of Director or their staff representative, now we have, it's explicitly denotes that it has to be an Office of Civic Engagement staff representative. I also did some minor capitalization edits. I don't know if that really matters, but the big one is that it is now officially tied to the office itself, and it's not just any staff person. Then our next one is a new edit, which is just below the membership list, the italicized part. Previously, it had just specified sort of something that that was already in the elections committee, which is the fact that any elected person who is on the committee who is planning on running next year cannot be on this committee for not contrast of interest.
Conflict.
Thank you. Conflict of interest matters, but we updated it because to include sponsors of initiative campaigns and sponsors of opposition campaigns to initiatives and referenda. Because we realized that those also, people running those also have a significant conflict of interests that would necessitate them probably not being on this committee. Yes, and then our other major one is down in quorum, which is just down a little bit. To counter the concerns last time about the seated membership, we have added it so now that the executive board member seat and the Senate member seat must be filled for quorum in addition to having a majority of quorum. So there will be at least 3 spots filled, myself and those 2 seats for quorum to be had, although preferably we will have as much people as we can on the committee. And then the other edits are all the same as last time, which including the reference to the AS parliamentary procedures and the AS governance rules of operations, our default rules of operations and parliamentary procedures.
My only thought is in the, thank you so much for editing these and taking our suggestions, thank you so much. My only thought is possibly, and I would like to hear the board's thoughts, is removing for the AS Student Senate member selected by the AS Student Senate, remove that it's confirmed by the executive board. I don't necessarily understand why that's in here, and I think it takes away the power that we're giving to the Student Senate and making them be confirmed by the executive board. I feel comfortable moving forward with everything we have right now and removing that since I don't see any substantial benefit that we get from having it be confirmed by the executive board.
Yeah, I would agree. It's a good catch. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know why that would be in there, but
It's just how it was before, so
yeah.
I ended up leaving it in there.
Yeah, it's definitely not you because of you, I said so.
Are you talking about section 8 here? Rules of operations?
No, up in the membership, where it says any AS Student Senate member selected by the AS Student Senate and confirmed by the executive board.
Oh, I see.
No reason for us to be confirming it.
I just want to say on this section about quorum, where it says, in addition, the AS Executive Board and the AS Student Senate member positions must both have seated members in order to constitute a quorum. That language to me kind of confuses me. It makes me think that the Executive Board member and the Senator have to be present for the meeting to be able to happen, to make a quorum.
Okay, I get that, and I guess ultimately some things I guess are, I'm a person I like to say things very precisely, which often then ultimately accidentally translates to it being complex. I'd be willing to see that get changed to a more obvious one. I don't necessarily know off the top of my head how I would possibly edit that, but that's a good idea.
Yeah, well, not even that it needs to be edited, I'm just wondering if that causes confusion for anybody else.
Well, I think that's the thing, I also I understand what it's saying after reading it a couple times, but I would rather not have to read it a couple times.
Yeah.
I'm looking for language in a different charter right now, but I think that's the same point.
Yeah, we definitely want it to be accessible because it's going to be future student government that's going to be reading and interpreting this, so.
Because I'm guessing the intention of that line is to say, like, the committee isn't fully formed until those members have seated positions.
Yeah.
So, not technically talking about quorum, because this was something that LAC had, was that like, that LAC isn't fully formed until majority of the members are seated. So I'm wondering if that phrase really belongs like in the quorum section, or if it's to describe when the committee is fully formed.
Okay. So sort of necessitating the creation of a new section.
Not that actually, now that I'm thinking about it, because what we have in the LAC, it's still in quorum, and I can look at that to compare the language if that would be helpful.
Well, I think you could propose maybe just, the committee can't meet without the Senate and executive positions, seated. Does that get the same sort of idea?
Well, that makes it seem like do they have to be at every single meeting?
So,
in order for the.
yeah, so L'Oreal advisor question note / proposition, run through a couple of scenarios of seated members present, because there's a difference between seated and present, right? And I think that clarity is important, but you could meet quorum, if you remove that language, you could meet quorum at any of the students at large appointed, the numbers, you can reach that majority, and that body could independently function absent the seating of the two positions appointed by the governing bodies. Is that your intent? Or are you trying to read that they must be present, which is the question I heard, at the meetings, and seated and present not being equal? The language as stated may be clear enough, but not understandable to a casual, non-technical governance reader. A member of the public that reads that is going to be as confused as you all were walking through it, even though it's precise. Seated versus present.
We are government readers and we're confused about it.
Yeah.
I have an idea. Would it be all right, Isaac, if we wait until the first meeting in January to approve this, if that's all right? So then we can come back with the edit to Article 2 and Article 6, so then we don't have to spend some time workshopping now. You can definitely start on working on recruiting at large members and getting ready, but our first meeting is the day after school starts winter quarter. And so it will be approved November or January 11th, hopefully, if that's all right.
Thursday, right? The Thursday.
Yeah, because it starts on the 9th.
It starts on the 9th, my bad.
Yes.
It'll be on the 11th of January, that Thursday, but is that all right?
I think that should be fine, if I can start seeing people, or the process of finding people to actually be on it before then. Although that would only be like 2 days or whatever.
Yeah.
And I can help you with that and compare what we have at the LAC for clarity.
It'd be very appreciated.
And if this body's comfortable proceeding with recruitment, because the dispute is not about the composition of the membership. It's about the verbiage around the other things.
Yeah.
I think that's totally appropriate.
It will likely be at that meeting too that we would probably, it wouldn't be until that meeting that we would appoint an executive board member to be on that committee anyways, or likely the meeting after, so. Thank you so much for attending our meeting today, and I'm sorry that you would have to come back to another one, but thank you so much for attending tonight.
It's all right, I just need to get done.
Yeah, we can find a time and I'll email you a little bit about everything, so yeah.
Thank you.
Well, have a great rest of your night and thank you so much for doing this today.
Thank you guys for having me.
Procedural note, you're officially tabling that action.
Oh, yes, yeah. Would anybody like to move to table the Elections Advisory Committee Charge and Charter?
I move to table the Elections Committee Charge and Charter.
5 seconds.
It's been motion and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor of tabling the Elections Advisory Committee Charge and Charter until the January 11th meeting, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. Any abstentions? It passes unanimously. Okay, next we are going to move on to information items, which is the Student Civic Leadership Award nominations. One moment while I pull up some information. A little bit of background is I was approached by Michelle Anderson, who works in events and communications for the University President's and Provost's office, and she wanted this opportunity shared with student government so that we can, if we know of any leaders who we think would be important for the Student Civic Leadership Award, that we recommend to staff to nominate them, or us, I think ourselves possibly can nominate people. A little bit confusion there, but essentially what it is a Student Civic Leadership Award that's put on by the Washington Campus Coalition for Public Good. We have it on here on Western's campus, and there are going to be 2 ASWWU students, and yeah, so in partner with the Washington Campus Coalition for the Public Good, nominations are currently open for this award and are due January 3rd, 2024. ASWWU students that are either undergraduate or graduate students are eligible as long as they are doing civic engagement work or social entrepreneurship. Any ASWWU faculty or staff can nominate a student. So yeah, if we think anybody would be eligible for this, or we think that it is recommended, there's the opportunity to nominate, and I think there might even be any staff or faculty can nominate somebody. 2 students will be selected from each partner campus, so there's going to be 2 students at ASWWU that are going to be chosen, and it is selected by the governors, and anybody who is chosen at Western's campus will then be submitted for the Governor's Student Civic Leadership Award, and the Governor's Award, you can either get a $500 stipend or a $1,000 stipend. Last year, we had a student on our campus win one of the Governor's Student Leadership or Student Civic Leadership Awards. But yeah, we just wanted it to be shared today. So yeah, I thought I would take some time and share that. And if there are any other leadership channels as well that you think would be appropriate to share this, please feel free to let me know and we can share that with them. They have shared this in Western today on social media, and they've also had a couple of posters that have gone. The Associated Students Executive Board in aware of what's happening since we are leaders on campus, which is super exciting. Okay, next we're going to be moving on to the Student Government Charter, which is going to be document 3. A little bit of background on this document. We have worked in a task force with myself, Sophie, Gabe, and then also John, who is a College of Science and Engineering senator in the Student Senate, to work to make a couple of changes to the charter, and then also once the edits to this are made, we are then sending this, or have sent this, to Melinda Husky for her input and some other additions. So yeah, and then there's also Gabe hopefully has planned a meeting with Melinda to discuss some further thoughts that she has to add to the charter, since we were only able to meet a couple of times before the end of the quarter in about like 45 minutes to hour-long meetings. So then we are going to send this charter to Melinda after today's meeting, or it's already been sent, and then we'll send it one more time if there's any additions or comments that people have. And then Melinda will give us a changed version back to us that incorporates some of our thoughts and some of our comments and edits, and then it will come before the task force again, and then we'll go over everything, and then it will be presented once again, hopefully as an action item to the board here and also to the student senate, so that it can be approved in time for the February Board of Trustees meeting. So that's a little bit of background on that. The charter, because I know Sebastian's new, so we kind of talked about this all year, but you are dealing with this for the first time. So essentially the charter, we think about the documents that kind of govern student government as a layered cake, and the charter is up on the top. And so this is kind of the like big document that really shares what our duties are and how we operate, and then also allowing us to be part of the university governance structure here. So yeah, this is the first time that it's being edited since I think 2010, if I'm correct. So it's super exciting that we get to engage in this process because it doesn't happen pretty often. So very excited to be able to do that. There aren't too many edits that we had necessarily. The main kind of comments that we had first starting out is that the charter talks about how we represent all students of Western Washington University, and all students have the opportunity and responsibility, or the right and responsibility to participate in shared governance. Yet at the same time, we really only engage here at the Bellingham campus. Students in the Bellingham campus, we are the only students that pay the SNA fee. And so there was a little bit of confusion there about do we represent all students, because currently we're really only representing the Bellingham campus, and students on other campuses do not have the ability to vote in our student elections, and if they cannot vote for us, how are we truly a representative of them? We made a couple of other comments or a couple of other edits. It's important that this has changed from talking about just the AS Executive Board previously, so now it talks about student government as a whole. So that encompasses the Student Senate and the Executive Board, and so encompassing both of those, it's my hope that this can also go before the Student Senate, since it has been, it's mentioning both and it's talking about both, encompassing the entire student government. It's not just chartering the Executive Board like in the previous one. It really was just talking mainly about the Executive Board. Yeah, mainly it's a lot of comments. There are only like a couple of really big edits. I don't think it necessarily included all of our track changes. In the intro, there was a couple of different ones. I think it saved a little bit weird. But yeah, does anybody have any questions about the comments, any thoughts, or any additions that could be made?
Well, nothing on the charter itself, just want to be very clear in particular. You said that this new one encompasses the whole student government, and you said the old one only encompassed the Executive Board. How I understand it is that the 2010 charter, the one that we're currently under, chartered the whole AS and delegated very specifically some powers to the Executive Board and did not mention the Student Senate, which is slightly different from what you said, but it's
Yeah, thank you for adding that clarity. Yes, yeah, that's what I was intending. Thank you for clarifying that. But yeah, this does not talk about the entirety of the AS. This is chartering just student government here. So.
Something that I have been bringing up is about the abolishment of the ASWWU and the mechanisms for that. And so I see some changed language, as far as I can recall, in Article 2, Recognition, Section 3. The AS student government may only be abolished by a vote of the voting membership of the ASWWU as defined in the ASWWU Constitution. I went ahead and looked at that right now. And what that says is the ASWWU may only be abolished by a 2/3 majority vote cast by the membership of the ASWWU. And I just want to bring attention to that because that's not a majority of the vote that is held. It's like 8,000 plus people, like the entire ASWWU. Which I'm in favor of, because I think it should take a lot of people to get rid of this. But that has been a point of contention in previous meetings, so I wanted to call attention to it.
Yeah, thank you so much for calling attention to that. I think that that's really important. The reason that that decision was made was so that we're not defining something different in the charter that then looks different in the Constitution, and instead in this document it's calling back to the Constitution, where the Constitution is a little bit easier to edit than the physical charter itself. And so we really just wanted to be calling back to these previous documents so it's not two separate documents saying two separate things.
Right. It does also say in the Constitution that all amendments to this Constitution must be approved by a majority vote of the ASWWU. So, just putting that out there as well.
Once I'll add that, this is where maybe differences in philosophy about what words mean come into play, is that historically that word verbiage has been interpreted as the majority of the people voting because the Constitution has been amended before, and not with 8,000, not with, but like 7,000 students.
Yeah, we've never had that many people vote ever.
Precisely.
Yeah. So, I think it's just a matter of like really, when it sort of comes down to like how those who runs the election to some extent.
Fair enough. I think talking about constitutional amendments, a majority vote of the ASWWU is different than a majority vote by the membership of the ASWWU. But those are the conversation we could have another time. Yeah, just something I wanted to put out there.
Yeah. Thank you for clarifying that, yeah.
Well, in technical note, once charter update is approved, you're going to proceed immediately to review of the Constitution, impacts there, potential for updating that, and then bylaws is the next layer of the cake that explicitly should really get reviewed for alignment. The point that any constitutional updates need to be done by a vote of the ASWWU membership is important because it's something you'll want to consider timing-wise if you decide to update the Constitution or propose updates, a referendum that goes on the ballot to have that done, and you're going to run into the question of which membership you're electing and things like that. If you propose changes to the bodies of membership, I'll just share, it's, okay, like we can get to extreme concepts like I brought to Gabe, what would happen if you proposed 10 senators versus 20, one per college? So if you were to entertain those sorts of things or suggest them, that's going to be in a constitutional update referendum. How you're going to time that and how you're going to operationalize that will be things you're going to have to be considered, and I'll press you on. For instance, if you run a referendum and an actual election of seated members on the same ballot, how does that work in tandem? Do you entertain a lame duck session of members voted by the last Constitution as approved for the entirety of the 24-25 year? What does that do to their capacity, right? So we'll entertain questions like that as we move forward. So
Big
yes.
conversations to be had there. Really fun conversations too, so. Lots of thoughts on the Constitution, not a lot of thoughts on the Charter, lots of thoughts on the Constitution. Yeah, are there any other thoughts? I know we kind of gotta move on to the next couple of things, so we have enough time to discuss everything. But if there is the opportunity for anybody, if you would like to have a meeting with Melinda Husky and go over anything, you are more than welcome to do that. If there are edits in here that you do not think are appropriate, you're more than welcome to reach out to Melinda. Don't even have to loop me in, just share it with her. Any edits that are made though, her and I will talk about and we'll go over. But anything that you see in here, you are more than welcome to send an email, try and schedule a meeting. You are more than welcome to, and just because we were working on it in a task force situation does not mean that the rest of you do not have to be included in this conversation. Okay, so next we're going to move on to document 4, which is going to be the ASWWU state lobbying agenda for this upcoming year, or 2024, sorry.
Okay, yes, so this is something that came together late Tuesday night, early Wednesday, so pretty fresh. But I'm wondering if it would be helpful for me to read, if people haven't had a chance to read through it themselves, it'd be helpful for me to read through it section by section and people give comment, or if you all feel comfortable with the content of it. Also, it's 5 pages right now. That's because I did 1.5 line spacing because it helps, and a bigger font because that helps me read better. So it's not going to be this long in the finalized version. I just wanted to give context for all of these issues. So shall I go by it piece by piece?
I don't necessarily think we need to read out every section, but I think that we can talk about the section areas. So financial aid, student employment, health and wellness, kind of go by sections, if that's all right.
Okay, so we have a value statement at the top, talking about, initially that was going to be more explicitly describing the values of intersectionality, but what our council came to was being more descriptive of the issue areas that we have in the agenda, and that being financial aid and the wellness of the student body, and so that's what's highlighted there. In addition to discussing robust, accessible, and equitable services provided to the student body, and that would help retention, completion, and enrollment rates, which is something that the university and the state legislature is very keen on. Any thoughts there? All right.
It looks great.
Moving on, financial aid, the Washington College grant. There are 2 things that we would like to be amended with the Washington College grant. We want the eligibility for it to increase from 60, for median family income, the threshold to be from 60% to 70%. And an additional issue is this cliff that happens that, let's say your median family income is 61%. Suddenly you're getting half the amount of the Washington College grant. So there's this idea of prorated award parameters, which is a really confusing term that I didn't know until Monday. But it's just a matter of how the grant is distributed to people who are slightly over the threshold. So that's what we're going to be advocating for with the Washington College grant. For bridge grants, those are things that, that is something that is available for people receiving the Washington College grant, but not the college, another scholarship. It's really confusing. But it is an award amount of $500 that's given to students in need. We're asking to increase that amount from $500 to $1,000. That helps cover the cost of student fees and things like that. Both bridge grants and the Washington, the specifications in the Washington College grant and bridge grants are going to expire in 2025. So we're asking to make them permanent.
One thing I wanted to add, I myself am a bridge grant recipient, and the one thing that's different about the bridge grant than the Washington College grant is it really was enacted so that students can, while filling the gaps for tuition need, it also it allows me to pay my rent if I want to. It allows me to use it to buy books. I can buy food with it. The money is it is after my tuition is paid. If there's no more, it really is meant to help further assist students. So I'm getting the $500 that I get from my bridge grant are given to me, they're deposited to me, and I've used it to pay my rent before. I used it to fix my car and really fill in the gaps there for some lower income students. So really awesome program. It's really amazing, and I am so excited to see the Washington College grant on here. and the bridge grant on here since they're very impactful for students, and I know in previous renditions they hadn't been included. So I'm very, very excited to see those additions here. So thank you for including that.
You're welcome. But on that same vein, the Homeless Student Stability Program is a program that aims to support students in the crisis of becoming immediately homeless, and so that provides funding for students to secure housing and to also be able to access university facilities. The funding for this program is currently $4.4 million, and the funding runs out very quickly early on in the school year, so it's not able to be accessed by students who need it. We're asking for the funding to be increased to $10 million, and just to ensure that it is expanded. Initially, it was introduced as a pilot program. I think it was present at Western and another school, I can't remember which one. But we want to make it available across the state and to ensure that it is adequately funded to serve students in need. So that's the financial aid portion. Next is student employment. I'm sure most of you are aware of the issues of unionization for student employees. We have the Western Academic Workers United Union here at Western, and they've been doing a lot of work. We're all members of it for now. But that's a lot of things.
Can I make a technical clarification on that when referring to bargaining units? The membership of the proposed unit is currently being bargained. So there's no technical membership of the bargaining unit as such right now, just for clarity. It's a distinction, but the bargaining unit's in negotiations. That the proposed list of membership is what's being discussed in the first contract negotiations.
Could you repeat that for 1 second?
Repeat that.
Repeat the different, I just want to write it down.
Yeah, so unless you're paying dues to the union that is bargained on your behalf and has a currently signed contract, I would be cautious about referring to yourselves as union members at this stage. So for clarity, it's in the initial contract bargaining period. ASWWU, as proposed and agreed, is bargaining with the institution, the university, for that initial contract.
Yeah, I want to clarify that, basically what Adam said, that's right. We're all members of the bargaining unit for the state labor board at this point. There's obviously, you guys all know, ongoing litigation, but you don't need to get into that. And
So there is a law that was passed in the last session, SB 5238, which gives academic workers the right to collectively bargain, and that's what we are in the process of doing here at Western. Thank you for the clarification. We are pursuing an expansion building on that law that would include operational student employees. Those are people that we interact with very frequently. For me, the Office of Civic Engagement, I'm constantly interacting with them, and those people aren't included in the current collective bargaining.
The definition of potential membership covered under collective bargaining currently is the way I would frame that potentially.
Okay, so the current potential membership of academic workers, we would like to potentially include operational student employees into that potential membership. It's not good.
Again, I felt that we're just thinking without giving student employees, basically it would, the effect of that would be right now only academic student employees have the right to collectively bargain, petition to form a union. So this proposed bill and what's being supported here would allow all student employees to petition, whether which bargaining unit they would be in is. That's down to what it says in the actual bill. Since the legislative session hasn't actually started yet.
Yes. Any other comments on the operational student employees' ability to participate in collective bargaining? Okay, we're going to move on to lowering the eligibility requirements for student employees to enroll in the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, known as SNAP. This was an addition that was brought to us this Tuesday, so it's kind of fresh. Initially, what we had been thinking of is the link there, so how do you jargon about this? The Washington Student Achievement Council wanted to notify staff recipients that they would be eligible for the Washington College Grant and able to go to college for free. But if they go to college, they are exempt from SNAP, or they are not eligible for SNAP unless they meet certain exemption requirements, and one of those is being employed on an average of 20 hours a week. For most student employees, we're limited to 19 hours a week or less. So that there's a lack of clarity between like the 20 hours and the 19 hours. We were gonna try to ask about student employees getting more hours, but then we realized it would be less complicated, probably more realistically able to achieve, and on it like easier on the students to be able to work, be required to work 15 hours rather than 20, like in addition to employment, because a lot of people are struggling to meet their basic needs, food insecurity is something that we're talking about constantly. So lowering the requirement for student employees specifically to be able to enroll from 19 hours to 15 hours a week is going to be on our agenda.
One thing that I think to add to that is I know you talk about the statistic that 77% of students ranked it as one of their top 3 choices for legislative priorities, but one statistic that I think is a little bit more impactful and is specifically talking about Washington students, and I think it might even be talking about Western Washington University students, and it's in it is the basic needs security among Washington college students. It was published this year, I'll send it to you, but 49.4% of students have reported housing or food insecurity. And so it is like almost 50% of students have experienced either housing security or food insecurity. And so I think that that statistic, while it is like the 77% ranked as something that they're passionate about, if we can say that almost 50% of students have experienced some type of insecurity, or even if we just want to talk about the food insecurity, which is almost 48%, it's 38.3% to be exact. I think it might be a little bit more impactful because we're talking about what students are actually experiencing, and I'll send that statistic to you, but I think it would be a great addition to be made.
That is a great comment, thank you for that. Any others on this? Okay, so we'll go to health and wellness. There are less specifics on this because before we go to the legislature, we want to go to these departments that are providing these services. First of all, we went to the Student Health Center and they pretty much said we're good. We're doing enough. So, yeah. We are still waiting on the Counseling and Wellness Center and the Disability Access Center to get feedback from them about how we can support them and like support them through the legislature and with funding and more staff. So that is something that we're interested in, that we want to pursue, but we're still waiting on more information. Something about the Student Health Center that they actually don't currently do is provide abortion pills to students, which is something that Kira had actually proposed to the Washington Student Association, and the Washington Student Association is pursuing. The Student Health Center currently provides emergency contraception and emergency contraception. At our last meeting, Sophie had talked about how they're securing a vending machine for contraception. But abortion pills are not easily accessible to students. Going to off-campus providers can cost hundreds of dollars, and that's a really big barrier, and having an unplanned, unwanted pregnancy can be very detrimental to a student's academic career. So that is something that we're interested in pursuing. And then finally, or any comments on that?
I have more research to share with you because I think it's the Washington Abortion Network just published some statistics that were published, I think like literally 2 days ago, about how counties that have higher education institutes in them have seen almost a 26% increase in abortion access, or like the need for abortion care. And so specifically when you have a higher education institute, you're going to see an increase in abortion need, or the need for abortion access. And so if we can have students access that through our health centers that we already have, it would really reduce the burden that we're seeing at a lot of our healthcare centers that do provide abortion currently. So I will send that to you.
Yes, I love the data. I welcome it, please. Yeah, that's great. Does anybody else have anything before I get to the last one? So the last one is supporting harm reduction measures in relation to illicit drug use. Fentanyl has been a very big issue just generally in American society, and something to prevent the unintended consumption of fentanyl is fentanyl testing strips, because we all know that college students are going to be using illicit substances. That's just kind of a reality. And so being able to protect those students from harm in that way is by providing fentanyl testing strips. That we're not currently doing that, so that's something that we absolutely could be and should be doing. Additionally, Narcan is a medication that can be used to reverse the effects of opioid overdose, and it is currently over the counter. It's becoming more accessible, but it would be really great if the university provided it directly to students in addition to the training that's required to administer it. Narcan is available from the police department on campus, but a lot of students don't feel safe or comfortable contacting the police department for Narcan for students who would be using illicit substances. So that's something that we want to be able to provide directly to students rather than having that extra party. And Adam, go ahead.
No, I'm just gonna ask a clarifying question. Narcan is actually available from UPD for distribution to students currently. Like if I, as a student, can go get Narcan and have it on my person. Is that the understanding? Because it's different than officers carrying and using Narcan. So I'm just curious about that. You mentioned, reluctance of certain students to approach UPD, and I was just curious about what the actual service is there, so.
Yeah, my understanding of it, which is probably incorrect now that you brought that up, was like a student going through an opioid overdose and then contacting UPD and then them coming to the scene and then they're yeah.
That's a very acute concern, like access to, or who do you call when. I don't care if UPD has it, I'm not calling them, right? So.
Yeah.
Even just the time that it takes, like sharing a personal experience. I live downtown. I've had to administer Narcan before. I've asked if I've had it on my person and have had to give it to somebody to then administer it to somebody, and multiple different experiences. And so the time that it can take to, if you have it on your person, administer it to somebody rather than call the police, wait for somebody to come, or emergency services and administer it, can save a life. So it's very important. And thank you for adding that, because it is, I'm surprised that we can't access it on campus. I think my little brother can access it at his high school, if I'm correct. So it's really interesting if we aren't able to access it here. So.
Yeah, I think it's just the struggle and understanding where all these resources are when we have to use them.
Yeah, last year there was a club, which is now defunct, I think, the Students for Sensible Drug Policy, and they used to give out Narcan as well as fentanyl testing strips. But with them sort of falling to the wayside, that resource has gone away with it, and that's very unfortunate.
Yeah, I didn't know that club had existed, so I'll look into that more if there's anything to be found there. And this is something that I discussed with the university's lobbyist, the Director of Governmental Relations, Nora Sellender, and she said it is also a really big priority for the administration and for education lobbyists in Olympia already. So it's definitely something they're interested in pursuing as well. And just generally all around, everybody is willing to move forward and make this happen.
That's amazing to hear.
Yeah. And it's always good when students and administration and faculty are able to come together on an issue and present it to the legislature, because that presents a more convincing argument that we're all in agreement on a certain issue that action needs to be taken. So that's a really good sign that they're on board with it. And I just put in a graph some funsies. I wanted a little graph in there. There it is. I mean, it's not a fun graph.
Such a fun
really
graph.
sad graph. I'm sorry. Yeah, like I said, this came together like very early on Wednesday morning. I was trying to get it in on a deadline, so just want to get people's feedback. It's very preliminary, and yeah, these are like the core issues. The way that the agenda is going to look and the information that's going to be provided is going to look different before it's finalized.
Thank you so much for your work on this, and please express our gratitude and thanks to LAC too, because I know how long that this can take and how intensive it is and how it's really hard to research this, so thank you. Thank you so much for your work, and please express to LAC that we are so grateful for the continued work on this, and we're really excited to see the final product, so
Yes.
yeah. Thank you so much once again. So.
You're welcome.
Are there any other final comments or questions or thoughts before we move on? Okay, we will move on to document 5 and 6, which is the ceasefire resolution. And then after we discuss this, we can also move on to the other document that has some other possible changes as well that we can discuss further. Yeah, and I can also present to the changes that I made. Yeah.
Yeah, so this was brought last week. We talked about a few things, just some minor edits. If you look, they should all be noted in red. I think that Kira's are in blue, but yeah, the red ones, they're all shown there. Adding long-term ceasefire and a just peace, and then adding the infrastructure being destroyed, and then just switching the order of some of the sort of student groups, like ethnic religious groups, to sort of make it more, that was one of the edits. And then that's the edits in Amendment A. You can see it formally written out. I did that just because the resolution process says that things are subject to amendments, so we kind of do amendment versus we don't have friendly amendments in our procedures. So yeah, if you want, and I'll add it to here for the blue sort of things.
Yeah, so I have some connections with some community organizations, and I was approached by an individual that I had some work with over the summer and previously on a couple of other political issues at a local level, and they shared that the Bellingham City Council is being approached. Both they were asked at their public comment at their meeting on Monday. I talked to the local issues coordinator in the Office of Civic Engagement. Her name is Gabby. I talked to her a little bit briefly about this and the students that went and spoke at public comment. And then also the response from the individuals of City Council. Essentially what is being asked is City Council is going to have a resolution that is going to come before them, or there is the hope that somebody will sponsor it and it will be voted on next week on Monday, and it is very similar to the resolution that the Seattle City Council passed. And so it is almost essentially exactly what we're asking in our resolution here as it is. They are asking for the legislature to support Resolution 786. It hasn't been shared with the public yet, the resolution language, but my friend shared it with me so that I could make sure that it aligned in the same ask that we're asking for, and all that the resolution currently is asking for is the support of Resolution 786, and just talking about a just peace. And I think they either use long-term ceasefire or permanent ceasefire language in theirs as well. So it aligns very closely, and I communicated this both with Aaron and Gabe. I know that we didn't talk about this last time, so my apologies for amendments that we weren't able to discuss fully in depth, but I was told about it on Monday night and tried to make the edits as soon as possible in order to get them in time for today. And so we decided, since Gabe, Aaron, and I were all draftees or editors of this document, we decided to move forward with including this since we have the most impact really with our local officials, and talking with the civic involvement coordinator, Gabby. She shared that there was some hesitancy expressed from some members, and it is really unsure if they will support a resolution. It has happened at the Bellingham city level, or at the, not Bellingham City, the Seattle city level. And so there's the hope that something similar can happen here, and us supporting it and sharing that is really in line with the rest of our resolution, and they are an appropriate governmental agency, and we really have the most impact with these city council members. A lot of them are also Western alums too, so, which is kind of exciting to see. All local members of the community, so.
Yeah, thank you, Carrie. I think those are good. Edits, for all those amendments A and B, I would sort of ask, is there any questions on those edits from last week and then the city council stuff? I'm gonna take that as no.
I just want to go over, just so we're all sure what the impact of this is we are just sending this to the people that are listed as the CC. So that's who is going to be the receiver of this. And a little bit of background, Sebastian, why we're kind of doing this is we have not spoken out on an international level as a student government previously. In all of the resolutions that we can go for, it's never anything that is a large international issue, which we haven't spoken out about, and we've done that intentionally since we focus a lot more on our campus, but it was decided that this would be appropriate since students have asked for it, hundreds of students have gathered on campus, and then also since it is deeply affecting our campus community, and it has deep, profound impacts here. And so it is, at least in my time here, in the 3 years and the 4 years that I've been in college, I have not seen another international issue affect students at this level. And it has been very deeply impactful to our campus community. And we believe that if there is a ceasefire, I definitely think it would greatly impact our campus community for the better. And so that is why we have decided to move forward with this, since it really, even though it is an international issue, it does have very tangible impacts here. And so that is why we're speaking out on this issue when we haven't spoken out about other things before. Or at least internationally. We've spoken out about, I think, some more national things, but never anything international before. So that's what it is. And then it's really what we have right now is asking for the a ceasefire and just peace is what we're asking for in its current iteration. And then the bills, both the House resolution and then also the House resolution is just a de-escalation and ceasefire. So yeah, and then we also talk about Joe Biden as well, with the UN ambassador for the UN to support a ceasefire, which I hope Joe Biden listens to us on.
Yeah.
I hope he reviews this and listens to us. But yeah, I just wanted to provide some of that context here, since I know it's your first day here and we're really kind of talking about something pretty big, so.
Yeah, really appreciate it, yeah. Guys, I want to ask here procedurally, do you want us to move the resolution and then move amendments A and B, or do you want us to like move amendments A and B and then consider amendment C, or do you want to just, do you care, like procedurally how we do it?
If we're gonna make any amendments, I think we should do it all at once.
All at once, okay.
The most appropriate, I think, and most sense to me, I don't know. I know it keeps like.
Sure.
Yeah, Rachel, you got the document I sent you then, amendment C.
You can screen share.
Yeah, it should have been emailed.
Yeah, give us just a minute technically to catch up on that one.
Oh, it was sent at the beginning of the meeting, but.
Rachel's busy taking notes.
I know.
We're glad.
I don't know if I was saying like, it was in like the ether.
Yeah, we got it. We have the email. It's just technical.
Do we have access to it? Like, we have, like, on our laptops, we do like add it to Teams.
I will email it to everybody, and I will I'll just email everybody really quickly.
And then Joe, you know, that works too.
Wait, since we're already in a meeting, does that mean that we could reply all and then they're not? Because it's
No,
not.
I'm BCCing everybody, I'm BCC everybody, don't worry.
You're oh boy. So for clarity, we're discussing the applicability of the Open Public Meetings Act in the state of Washington to our current activities. And it's not a matter of temporally, it's a matter of any whether inclusion by BCC or not is relevant, so I'd be careful with that. Any email that you all send to the entire group or a quorum of your members that discusses business is subject to the Open Public Meetings Act, which means that it's discoverable, right? So remember that legally. It doesn't matter whether it's on the agenda or not, or in the meeting or not. So just understand that structurally. So yes, anything distributed to all of you, which impacts the meeting tonight, is absolutely covered by the Meeting Act, which is also why it is highly recommended that you are only using, I'm taking advantage of this opportunity, to remind you that the use of your dedicated position email accounts provided by the university is the best method, and to actually avoid using individual email accounts will also help you in that regard.
One a clarification also, Gabe didn't CC the AS president on it, so I'm waiting to get my AS president
Yeah.
email
I got you.
so that I can forward it to everybody, because I can just type it in these things.
Madam President, would you like your advisor to forward this information to your official accounts on your behalf?
That would be great, that would be
Perfect,
great,
I gotcha.
please.
Give me 2 seconds. And in the meantime, are you pulling up? Did you have luck with that?
It's right
I
there.
don't do that.
What?
I did it. You don't need to do it.
I've been beaten to it by the Senate President. Fabulous.
Perfect. As long as we can all do it. It might take a little bit, the one line here is not always the best.
I guess I could also just forward it to literally everyone on the board. Is that good, or do you want to do it?
And it's also been pulled up for your
Yeah,
review.
it's just that document, it is just that. There's nothing else, it's just that.
Yeah, so this amendment, it adds a new line after where, so right now we're saying the students have called for a ceasefire. It would add a new line saying that they also called for no more U.S. military aid to Israel. Then there is a small edit, which I don't really care about either way, but I thought was maybe appropriate, where we're talking about U.S. funded weapons putting billions of dollars, because it is billions of dollars. It's like 260 billion over the past 75 years or something like that. And then adding a resolving clause that's just asking senators to oppose the House of Representatives Bill 6126, which is the $4.6 billion in supplemental security aid that has already passed the House, under consideration in the Senate. Yeah, that's the extent of the amendment. I think sort of the reason to add this is because, like, fundamentally, like, how can you have a sustained peace while you're still pumping billions of dollars of weapons into a region, and it's sort of that. So we're seeing, like, just a whole lot of weapons, U.S. weapons being used on Palestinians, and that's, like, the main reason why the U.S. is, like, somewhat complicit or entirely complicit in what's going on in Palestine. So that's the reason for that. Yeah, and I think Kira had raised some concerns, I think Adam and Leon had as well, about sort of, is this diving into foreign policy, which, like, we don't do. And I think, like, we're already diving into foreign policy with a ceasefire, and like a ceasefire without an end to military aid for me is, like, sort of the same as, like, the UN Secretary General invoking Article 99, which is, like, stern voice versus, like, it's just, I think they kind of have to go together, I think, in order for it to, like, be justice. But if the board is, like, opposed to this addition, I would rather the resolution be passed with amendments A and B tonight than not be passed with amendments A, B, and C. So I don't think it's a massive edit. You guys might disagree, so I'll open it to you guys to check.
Yeah, one thing that I want to say is I myself am personally not a fan of military funding at all. I have very strong issues against it. I've also tabled before, like I have worked this summer offering alternatives to military service for high school students and youth. I am continually adamantly against military funding, international military funding, not a fan, but at the same time, I don't see it in my position to really take a stance on that, or us as a board talk about military funding, since I really don't see it as part of this, or I don't necessarily see it as the most appropriate for this board to decide on. And also looking at other resolutions that the city of Seattle has passed, that the city of Bellingham will look at, none of them are talking about the Israel Security Supplemental Appropriations Act of 2024. All of them are really just talking about, I think it's House Resolution 728 or whatever, 768. None of them are talking about this. So I find it most appropriate to fall in line with what other governmental agencies are doing. And it is important to add that no other student government has made a resolution in Washington State talking about a ceasefire. So we're the first one to do that. But I don't necessarily see it being most appropriate to include this. And I also think that if we are going to include this, I think that there are larger edits that need to be made that talk about why we're doing this and really explaining the connection between, because one of the reasons too it was removed is because we had to really talk about like what appropriations are, like how Congress has the ability to do this, which are not reflected in these. It was a lot longer, and we just removed it also because of the concerns that I had, along with some concerns from administrators, which I think might be a little bit of different concerns. And then there was also just how the level of complexity that it adds that we were afraid could be, or that I was afraid that could be confusing to some individuals, so.
So I'm not as much in the loop with what students are saying. So like Erin, I don't know what's going on at LAC or like where this is being talked about. I'm not in the room there when students are talking about this. So, I mean, my opinion is just like, I don't know, are students calling for this? If they are, then I think probably our job is to represent that. But if they aren't, then probably not. Probably adding things that we think are good based off of our personal opinions may not be like doing our job, but I don't know what's going, so I'm not sure, I don't know, like Erin or like anybody else may be able to shed light on like, if you've been in the room when these conversations are happening.
One thing that I like to share is I think it's important too, when we get to the complexity of military funding, different students have different opinions, and I've seen different opinions from students. I've seen, when it comes to a ceasefire, I think most students can agree, and we're really representing a lot of our constituents here. When it comes to this, yes, I have seen some, and there are students who will go with that there should be no funding for military weapons, but I think that there is some more disagreeable, and it really depends. It changes perspective here, where we're going from representing a lot more students if we're just talking about a ceasefire, but if we add the military context in there, I think it goes to fewer students that we are representing there, so.
Yeah. So again, this is something that at LEC we kind of like taken off the table, but just in regards to the document, so what we're citing for the most part, as far as representing Western students, is these rallies that have taken place in Red Square, and those rallies specifically, for the most part, have been calling for an end of military aid to Israel, and so that those events specifically are what we're referencing. I think it would be appropriate and possible to call for an end to military aid not being reflective of the student body that we are referencing. My issue is kind of what Kira was getting to about how much it complicates the document, how much more revisions and clarifications we would be needing to have. And I think at this point, like, there is a certain time crunch that we're dealing with. Like you were saying, I'd rather have amendments A and B pass than not to have, and not amendment C, than the entire document not to pass tonight. So while I'm personally in agreement, and while I think we could add it, I think there's more that needs to be adjusted with these that I don't think that we can get to all of it tonight.
I was wondering, you had something you raised your hand earlier.
Yeah, I got a little lost in the weeds there, and the thing I was going to say isn't necessarily about military aid in Israel, but I think we should be a little more careful when we're talking about just military funding, given the fact that as student representatives, we're also representing the veteran students who, through military funding, that could potentially be paying for their education here through the VA. So just wanted to caution a little bit and point that out there.
Yeah, both those things were in my head, because majority of students have been calling for ceasefire and calling out military aid, but at the same time, we do have veterans on campus, and it's just that struggle between the two. But I do think it is beneficial to get Amendment A and B passed, just to expedite the process a little bit more too, because we have been sitting on this for a little while, so.
A few notes. The Act 6126 doesn't really have any U.S. service members. It is actually just about weapons. And yeah, I understand the concerns about sort of clarity. And I think we did take out some stuff about the powers of Congress, but then we also took out the powers of the president and things like that. So right now all we have is just saying that these people represent us, not saying what they can or can't do. So I don't think that we need to say that Congress can appropriate money in order to say that we oppose Congress appropriating money for this reason. Because we also don't say that Congress can pass resolutions in order for us to say that we oppose Congress, or that we support Congress passing some other resolutions. But so yeah.
It looks like it is time, so if we're not going to move this to an action item and approve it, we will need to make a motion, in my opinion, for more time if we're gonna discuss this further.
I would like to make a motion for more time.
How much?
Yeah, you have to state how much.
10 minutes?
10 minutes. Motion for 10 more minutes to extend this meeting.
Don't look at me. Y'all have a motion on the table.
It has to be seconded.
That's 1 minute.
It's been motioned and seconded. All those in favor of extending the meeting time until 7:12, please say aye. Those opposed say nay. Nay. The ayes carry. We'll have 10 more minutes.
I just wanted to also clarify at the same point, as someone who's on veterans benefits, that is not gonna probably go to the VA. Most of the people here are probably on post 9/11 bill or GI bill, so just to verify that.
Yeah, the clarifications that I feel need to be made isn't about that Congress has the ability to appropriate funds. It's just about the billions of dollars being spent and the military, or the weapons that are being used. I think adding more clarification there would be helpful if we want to make a statement like this. And I personally just think if we want to get this passed tonight, it's not going to happen tonight.
One appropriate advisor would like to clarify their comments and share the concerns that were shared in a small group with all of you, but defer to timing on when that's appropriate.
Does anybody else have anything to share? Please go ahead and share
Yeah,
that.
so, and again, those of you that were in the meeting with Leona and myself, when we shared these, let me know if I'm inappropriately remembering at this point, because it's been a long week, but the advisor concerns that we expressed is the resolution as it has been crafted up to the point of inclusion of this amendment very careful to say representing students, very clearly delineated numbers. You don't refer to majority of students in this document, as I understand it. I would be very cautious about forwarding a resolution on behalf of all students at Western Washington University, understanding that even at its maximum participation, the active and visible rallies on campus are 300 students. You represent 14,000 students. 300 students is a very small and vocal percentage of those. You are also responsible for representing those that don't have loud, active voices on this campus. We know through those actions, we're seeing it, even pre this, tensions and concerns between different student groups on campus that you are all tasked with representing. It is definitely another step to explicitly name things that are more controversial. If you make that decision consciously, of course, that is your purview. But I would be very cautious in that question.
Yeah, I think one thing to add as well, we haven't had listening sessions. Like some of us have attended the rallies. I myself have attended some of the rallies. I myself have attended a listening session. Us as a student government though, us together, we have not attended listening sessions and we have not held one either. We said that we wanted to create an open environment for discussion. We sent out an email. Some of us have visited clubs. Some of us have visited individual people, talked to individual constituents, but we have not created the level of creating a conversation where students can be engaged that I think is necessarily appropriate to make some of the more controversial statements, even when I myself personally will deeply agree with them.
I would sort of, I would want the motion right now, but I also want to sort of very explicitly have Amendment C considered. So I'm going to move that we approve the resolution with amendments A and B, and then I'm going to also move it if it dies, that we consider that we are amending that motion with Amendment C. So we would have two votes. Is what I would like to do, but is there anything?
The resolution is being moved to an action item.
I literally can't hear you. So
Gabe is trying to move it so that A, B, and C are moved for approval, is what Gabe is making a motion for, but before we can do that, we need to move the resolution to an action item.
It's important to know that A and B separate from C. So we approve it, and then we deliberate on whether or not we want to approve the other one.
We consider A, and then we consider C, and then we either approve or reject C, and then we approve or reject A and B in its entirety. Okay. Or
I think that's kind of a lot. So let's either make an amendment. We are going to do all three at once. We are going to make one, and it's going to either contain all three, it's going to contain one, or it's going to contain two. I think because I think it is confusing if we're going A, B, and then we're going to do C. It just, we can do that if we would like. I think it's just creating another level of confusion.
But if we just vote on whether or not we're going to apply C, and then we vote on the whole thing with either, it would just be sort of, because we're already assuming we're going to take A and B, that's what it sounds like. Sounds like we have sort of an acclamation there.
But we also don't know, so we can't state anything until we fully vote, is also important.
I feel like we should vote on the amendments individually, vote on Amendment A, vote on Amendment B, vote on Amendment C, understanding that they're going to pass together.
Sure.
That's a great idea.
Okay.
And for advisory clarity, you're proposing that you do that motion first on each. I'm trying to walk through clearly, so how this would work operationally. A motion to approve the inclusion of Amendment A in the resolution, up or down vote. Motion to include Amendment B, up or down vote. Motion to include Amendment C, up or down vote. Then moving the approval of the resolution with approved amendments to an action item and approving that. Is that what I'm understanding?
Yeah.
Thank you for that clarity.
Yeah, I'd like to move to move the ceasefire resolution from an information item to an action item.
Wait, that's,
So time out, so
Oh,
that's
that's a-
literally reverse of what I
No,
just
yeah.
stated. So move to approve the inclusion of the amendments in the ceasefire resolution.
Listen to comprehension.
And I know, and it's a little bit semantic about it's an information item, you're making motions on information items, that's fine. Don't get tied up in that, get tied up in the clarity. I heard proposed an up or down vote on each amendment for inclusion first, then move the entire package to an action item, move to approve that. Don't get tied up in the semantics of information, the action.
we just wanna make sure that we're all on the same page.
Yeah.
That's all, that's the main thing.
Know what you're voting on.
Yes. Oh, we're also gonna need more time.
No, we can just start making the amendment, or the motions and doing that.
Well,
You've got enough time, you'll be
yeah,
fine.
what,
I got you, you focus on
For
your
the
work, I'll focus on
inclusion
your time.
of, amendment A into, this resolution.
Godwin seconds.
It's been moved and seconded. All of those in favor of including amendment A as stated in document 6, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Any abstentions? Okay, it passes.
One moves to consider, or to include motion, or sorry, let me restart. One moves, to include amendment B in the resolution.
Godwin seconds.
It's been moved and seconded. All of those in favor of including amendment B as stated in document 6 of the meeting packet, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. Any abstentions? Amendment B passes unanimously.
One moves for the inclusion of amendment C in the resolution.
Godwin seconds.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor of including amendment C as stated on the document on that screen, please say aye. And can we raise our hands too?
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Nay. Any abstentions?
Same.
Okay, it is 1 aye, 3 nays, 3 abstains. The motion dies. Or fails, sorry. Wrong wording, I don't know. I would like to open the floor to move it to move the resolution to an action item.
I move to move the resolution to an action item.
Pratt seconds.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor of moving the ceasefire resolution to an action item, please say aye. Aye. Any abstentions? Or any nays? Any abstentions? No. It passes. Okay, that's an action item. Would anybody like to? Yeah. Would anybody like to move to approve the ceasefire resolution with amendments A and B?
One move to approve the ceasefire resolution with amendments A and B.
Wood seconds.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion?
Yeah, I have a question about, I'm so sorry, this is why I want to ask for more time. I wanted to remove one of the citations to the document. Would it be possible to do that?
Which one?
Citation 11 from Al Jazeera, it's an opinion piece, it's not a news article.
Are there other citations? Yeah.
Nope, just one.
I'm fine with that.
What one does it cite though? What is it?
It's,
Oh, okay.
Whereas Israel has launched an invasion of the Gaza Strip and raids in the West Bank, there's 2 other citations for that,
Okay.
so.
If we wanna not include source 11, we will have to vote no, and then we will have to move again to include with that removal.
also
After discussion, you can amend.
We can amend, is that easier?
Yeah,
Okay.
based on your discussion, and
Okay,
then the actual, just clarify the actual motion as amended.
okay. So, based on our discussion, all those in favor of passing the ceasefire resolution with the amendment of removing source 11 due to it being an opinion piece, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Any abstentions? It passes unanimously. Okay, I would like to call this meeting, or I would like to adjourn this meeting at 7:14 PM.
Public meeting, that's not order.
Yeah, on order. I'm so excited to be back on campus in like 12 hours.
The only reason I'm gonna do this at 10 a.m. tomorrow is so that you don't feel nervous.
I know.
I don't know what the resolution. These are gonna for us to
Like 2 days.
sign it, or we just gonna go?
We can.
I did the same thing,
And if we want the,
emailed me, and then it was like, your presentation.
Oh, eventually, I was also gonna, if you could like, just put our signatures on the resolution, to get it more like a